Fleischer Studios holds a unique place in animation history, not just as Disney's greatest rival, but its complete and total opposite. Founded by inventor Max Fleischer, the studio didn't begin with fairy tales or talking animals or anything like that, but actually with a machine. In 1915, Max Fleischer patented the rotoscope, a device that allowed animators to trace live-action footage frame by frame. So if anybody that is familiar with the old school lightsabers, that's what rotoscoping is. The result was movement that felt unbelievably real, fluid, grounded, and unlike anything audiences had seen before. The invention would define the Fleischer look, surreal worlds anchored by physical weight and human motion. In the 1920s, Fleischer Studios set up shop in New York City, and the city's influence was unmistakable. These cartoons were urban, noisy, jazzy, and strange. Early successes like Out of the Inkwell and Talkartoons introduced audiences to a new kind of animated energy, elastic, chaotic, and visually experimental. Then in 1930, Fleischer Studios introduced Betty Boop. Betty became an instant icon of the pre-code era. She was a flapper, flirtatious, independent, and unapologetically adult. Far, far removed from the sanitized, childish versions of what Disney was cranking out. Her cartoons were filled with jazz soundtracks, tons of innuendo, and dreamlike imagery that often veered into the bizarre and the unsettling, at a time when Disney leaned toward sentiment and innocence. This difference literally defined the studio's identity. Where Disney's cartoons felt pastoral and wholesome, Fleischer's felt like vaudeville and a late-night jazz club brought to life. Backgrounds melted, objects danced, and reality bent under the rules of a dream logic. In 1933, Fleischer reached its commercial peak with its acquisition of Popeye the Sailor Man. Popeye's cartoons were a massive hit, so successful that they frequently outperformed Disney shorts in theaters. They were tough, fast, and violent, filled with working-class grit and slapstick timing that resonated with Depression-era audiences. For a time, Fleischer Studios stood as Disney's most serious competitor. But that success brought a lot of pressure. Paramount Pictures, which distributed Fleischer films, pushed the studio to compete directly with Disney feature films. The result was Gulliver's Travels in 1939, followed by Mr. Bug Goes to Town in 1941. Both films were ambitious and visually impressive, but enormously expensive. They failed to match Disney's emotional storytelling and were released during unstable times, just as the world was sliding into yet another world war. The financial strain was devastating. Ironically and sadly, one of the Fleischer Studios' greatest achievements came at the very end. Between 1941 and 1943, the studio produced a series of Superman animated shorts that redefined what animation could look like. Using rotoscoping, dramatic lighting, and cinematic scale, these films established the visual language of superhero animation, a style that still influences the genre today. These cartoons were absolutely incredible, and I remember being a kid watching it on VHS and just being stunned at what I was looking at, and to know that it was so long ago when they were being produced, and the animation quality was second to none in my opinion. Behind the scenes, however, the studio was collapsing. Tensions between Max and his brother David Fleischer, combined with mounting debt and Paramount's growing control, led to the inevitable. In 1942, Paramount seized the studio. Fleischer Studios would dissolve and reorganize as Famous Studios, and the Fleischer brothers were removed from the company that they created. Yet the legacy does endure. Fleischer Studios proved that animation could be strange, adult, musical, and deeply experimental. Decades later, the Fleischer cartoons still feel shockingly modern. Decades later, and now thanks to the internet, you are able to see all of their catalog here on YouTube and various other streaming services. I highly suggest checking them out if you are just into good-looking animation or art or just things from the 1940s and 1930s. It is worth checking out. So that's about it for now. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will be talking to you sooner than later. Bye.